Hey guys, hi, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm planning to create a new Python repository and I don't have much battery left in my laptop and I want to finish this video as quickly as possible before I run out of my battery. Okay, so I'm just going to hurry up in this whole process. So I'm just going to skip some of the more complicated things and non-useful things. So I'm not going to cover about how to create a virtual environment or setup.py file, those kind of things. But I am going to cover some of the fundamental things and also some aesthetic things like how to create a proper readme file and a proper markdown format and data type hints, those kind of things. Okay, let's get started. So here I've got an empty folder. Okay, I didn't add anything here. This is not a git repository. Let me show you that here. Yeah, this is not a git repository. It's not configured with any of the git related stuff. So this is totally just a blank folder. Now let's go ahead and create some of our folders and files. To create that, we usually go with a template.py file. So this template.py is a simple Python script which has a list of all the different files that I need in my repository. Now all of these different files will be almost mandatory irrespective of which uh, uh, irrespective of the purpose of your repository. These are the files that you will kind of need. Some of them again might not be that necessary for your specific needs, but most of them are going to be pretty much necessary. So let's go ahead and create a new Python file, and we usually call this as a template.py. Okay, template.py. So what do we do in this template.py? We create a list. So I'm simply going to call this as file paths. Okay, this is a list, and now here I'm going to give all of my paths. So what are the most mandatory things in a repository? We need a readme.md file. What else? We need requirement.txt, of course. Okay, I need to hurry up. Come on. Okay, what else? Config.yaml file. But to create a config.yaml file, we usually store the YAML in a separate config folder /config.yml. Okay. Now I need to write a bunch of code which will iterate through all of these different elements, and it should automatically create any files and folders. Okay, so we'll see how we are going to do that. Now what else are the most essential things? Well, again, documentation /documentation, a folder called documentation, within which I'll say project documentation.docx. Depending upon your need, you can change the name of the file. You can create more number of files as well. What else? Okay, for now let's go with these. Yeah, nothing additional. Now let's go with the main components, which is main.py. We usually store all of the .py files in a separate folder called scripts. Here I'll say I need main.py, and also within scripts I'll create two new folders. One is called code and the other one is called logs. Okay, code is going to store all the different .py files that I'm going to use throughout my project. Logs is going to store all of the logs that I've generated whenever I run my file, whenever I run my repository pipeline. Okay, now in the code, what do I need in code? So essentially we always go with init.py file first. Do we need a log for do we need an init for logs? No, it's not necessary. I kind of don't want to go much in depth into what exactly is an init file, why do we need it, but as we go on building the repository, you'll understand why this is essential. Okay, now we have code init.py. Now we need to create a bunch of folders inside of this code folder. First and foremost, components, pipelines. Depending upon your need, you can create either one of them or both of them or even more. Utilities. I'm going to store all of the utility functions in this particular folder. What else? Logging, of course. So this is where all of the code related to logging functionality will be stored. This is where the logs will be saved. This is where the logs related code is being stored. Okay, slight difference there. What else? Can't think of anything at the moment, so let's go with these for now. Okay, under pipelines, utilities. Okay, under utilities, we usually go with common utils, and also we go with something called as a cloud or DB utils. Okay, so let's assume that you are working on a machine learning project where you're going to do some simple linear regression and all of your data is coming from some SQL database. So you will use this DB utils Python script to store all of your code, which will all of the different functions which will retrieve the data from your SQL database. Okay, you've got common utils, DB utils. What else? Okay, we forgot about the config folder. So the reason why I'm creating a separate config twice is because this is outside of the scripts folder and this is inside of the scripts folder. So usually some of the things which you don't usually modify that often, some of the hard coding stuff will be stored in this one. Okay, but all of the things which will constantly change, maybe things like credentials or hyperparameters, those kind of things will be stored in the outside config, global config. I don't need an init function actually. Actually I do need that. Let's create config.yml. Again, we can also create a .py file for a config, but usually it's a industry practice where we always create a YAML file for configuration details. In some other video, I'll also show you how we can use a .py file. For now, let's go with a YAML file. What else? Yeah, I think this should be enough for now. Let's go ahead and create each one of these files. Okay. To do that, let's iterate through each of them. For p in, let's go with path in file paths. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to write comments, but it's usually a good practice to write comments everywhere, no matter how simple the code is. Better to write comments. But today I'm not going to write the comments. We can cover that in later part, or if time permits, I'll just write it at the very end of the video. If not, you can just check out the GitHub repository, and I'll make sure that all of the complete Python pipeline is built, and only then I'll upload it to GitHub. So when I iterate through each of them, I don't want to overwrite any of them. So if I'm running this template.py file, I don't want these files to be recreated over and over again. Okay, so I'll say if os.path .exists. Actually, before doing that, I'll have to validate if this is actually even a file path or not. Oh, by the way, I didn't import the OS library. Let's write import OS. Hurry up, buddy, I don't have time. If not os.path.is file. There you go. If it is not a file path, then don't do anything. Sorry, if it is not a file path, then you are simply going to uh, we have to break down this into two different pieces. So I'll have to create, I can't use direct. Dir is one of the built-in methods in Python, just like print and all. Okay, so directory equal to, now this is where I'm going to break down the file name and the directory path. So in this first example, in this first element, everything after the slash is a file name. Everything before the slash is a directory. Dot indicates current directory. Let's take something else, for example. Here, everything after this slash is a file name, and everything before the slash are folders. Okay, so I need to separate both of these things. I can simply do a dot split with a slash and take the last element using negative indexing and all. But for now, I'm going to use a professional way. This is .dar name. I can simply pass path. Now this will automatically take this entire thing and it will store it in path. Okay. If not was.path.exists of directory. If that directory doesn't exist, then we are going to create it. Once we do that, we are good to go to create the actual file. To do that, we can use file handling. I can use file.write, file.close. Let's go with because that looks more professional. With open path, path, write mode as file.write. I'm not going to write anything, just let's leave it blank. This should automatically create a file and save it, irrespective of which file format it is. Let's just put up print statements. F-string file created, and then show me the actual file that you have created. Okay, this looks good enough for me. Let's go ahead and run this. If you see here, there are no files. Now let's run this. Ooh, permission denied for logs. Why did that happen? That is because I did not provide init.py. Is that the reason? Yes, that should be the reason actually. Now I'm simply going to clear screen, run it again. There you go. So if you see in the previous run, it created all those files. So I got all the separate print statements, but for now, since they already exist, it didn't overwrite any of them. It created a new one. Great. I would say template.py is pretty much done. I'm not going to use this at all until and unless I delete some of the things here. But there are so many additional things that you can do to template.py to make it more aesthetic, professional looking, and informative as well. Here we got main.py. Okay, so this is where the magic begins. But before we go into main.py, actually, you know what, let's just simply write some small piece of code. I'll define a function, adder. It will take 2 parameters and then it will add them and return them. Let's call this function with 1, 2. Highly simple code. Okay. Let's go inside of the scripts folder, Python main.py. Forgot to print it, of course. Result. Yeah, that's a correct spelling of result. Sometimes I like to keep the spelling mistakes as it is without correcting them. Adds a bit of character. Okay, 3. Yeah, that's perfect. Now, let's go ahead and make this complicated. The way we do that is we will say here print value of a. Let's use an f string, and similarly I'll say value of b. F string again, value of a plus b. Okay, 1 plus 2, addition of them is equal to 3. Great. Now let's make it even more complicated. To do that, what we're going to do first is I am going to put all of these print statements in logging functionality. So we are not going to use any prints. Instead, we will use logs. So it will generate a new log file here and it will display this exact same thing in a log file. To do that, I am going to create a function. Where should I do that? Let's do it at the very top. Okay, here let's import logging, and apart from logging, let's add a few more details as well. So this is okay, but not very informative. But when it comes to logging, we want to capture as much information as possible. So I'm also going to create something called as a what do we call it, a logging format. Okay, so I want this format to be very much detailed. So logging dot basic config, here I can say format equal to, and I can give a proper format. Let's create a variable actually. Okay, now I'll store my format inside of this variable. It's not going to be empty, by the way. I'll change it, but for now let's assume that this is the format that I want to follow, and I can leave it as it is, but whenever I run my pipeline, I want to see whatever I'm logging in the terminal as well. So not just the log file, but I also want to see it in the terminal. For that, we have a trick, which is logging dot file handler. Why is it not popping up? Then why is it in black and white? Come on. Okay. I need to give a path here. Let's leave it like this for now. Why do I have a red color here? It was not closed. It is closed. Oops. Okay. Anyway, let's put a comma and logging dot stream handler. Okay, so the first one is going to save the logs into a file. The second one is going to print the same thing into my system output. Path. Let's create a separate variable for path as well. Log underscore dr equal to logs. Okay, that's the folder name, right? Okay, log dr. I'll just pass it here. Okay, great. This is bothering me a lot. Why is this in red? There you go. I missed a comma here. Yep. Oops. Okay. Now, what else is pending here? Yeah, everything looks okay for now. Let's create an object for this class. By the way, logging is a class. Logger is going to be my object. Logging dot get logger. So I can just pass any name here, but I need to make sure that I'm passing the exact same name wherever I'm creating one more object, but I'm not going to create a new object. I'll be using this exact same object everywhere across. What should I give? Let's just give the project name itself, image classification. Okay. Now for an important step. So right now this will work perfectly, but whenever I do any sort of complicated things like connecting to some cloud resource or sending any HTTP requests, then my logs are going to be completely messy. So even if I don't explicitly tell my pipeline to log something, it will automatically log some of the things because of some other backend code. I don't want that to happen. So I'll say logger dot set level logging dot info. Okay, so what this does is I can simply say logger dot info of abcd. So only when I do this it will log something. If not, it won't log anything. If I don't write this piece of code, even if I don't explicitly tell something, it will automatically log some of the backend stuff that is happening. It is useful for some folks who know about logger and who know exactly what they're dealing with, but for now I don't want any of that background noise. Okay, so I've got logger. Instead of print, I'll say logger dot info. Same thing here, logger dot info. So which means whenever I run my Python script, it's going to create one log file with 3 different lines. Now let's go back to string. I want to capture a lot of different details here. Let's start creating our string. Let's give nice square brackets, and then I want to store the time of logging, and then the level at which I'm logging. So that's level name, and from which Python file am I doing this logging. So this should be module, I believe, and yeah, that should be fine. So let's add the message at the end. I'm using colons here. Should I go with this symbol? Looks nice. Let's just go with colon for now. Semi. No, that's a colon. Yeah. Yep, looks good for me. Let's go ahead and run this. Clear everything. Let's see if I do I have anything in log folder? Nothing except for the init. Of course, permission denied. Scripts, logs. Repos image classification script / logs. Okay. Okay, let's do one thing. I'll have to give the entire path. This is not the right path. I forgot about this thing totally. Um, I already have the directory. I don't want to create the directory, so I'll have to. I've already got this thing in template.py, so I don't have to worry about creating that directory. Okay, let's just worry about creating the file itself. So let's create log file path. I need to import OS again. os.path.join logdir with my file name. This is going to be in log format, a string of course. Let's create a new variable to store the file name as well. The reason why I'm doing that is because I want to generate multiple files every time I run my code. To do that, the only easiest way to do it is with the help of datetime. So every time I run my Python code, I want a new log file to be generated, and the file name should contain the date time of that particular run. So let's import date time, or actually from date time. Come on. How much battery do I have left? 44%. Okay, I can still do it. Okay. Date time dot now. This should give me the actual time right now, the entire time. Let's put it in a nice format. That's going to be something like %d underscore percentage hours, of course, and let's also go with year. Okay, this is going to give me date, month, year, and capital H is hours, minutes, seconds. Yep, this should do it, I believe. Okay. Let's go ahead and test all of this. Permission denied for scripts, logs. Why is that? What could be the reason? What could be the reason? Is it not able to detect logs directory? Oh, yes. This is... Oh, no. It's already in the same path, right? So it should be able to detect it. Oh, my bad. There you go. So if you see here, year, month, date, hours, minutes, seconds, then I've got what type of log am I doing, at what level, the module where I've logged, and then the message. If I go into logs, there you go, a file has been created. Let's run this again. New file has been created. Perfect. Looks absolutely beautiful. Okay, it's been 30 minutes already. Now, the reason why I've created this init.py everywhere, I am going to take all of this code and paste it in init.py. Okay, so in the init.py, I've got a variable called logger. It's an object, but I've got this object here. Okay, it's a variable anyway. So what I can simply do is from code dot, you can see all the different folders. Each of these is popping up because they all have an init function, init.py file. Code.logging import logger. So if you see, it gave me 3 different strings. Those are actually the variables that are present here. I can also use other strings as well, other variables as well. Okay, I'm importing logger here and I'm using that logger here. Let's save both of these. Let's run this again. There you go. So now my main.py looks more clean and easy to understand. Okay. Now comes config. So we are going to follow something very similar. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll create a dictionary here. Config equal to an empty dictionary, and then I'll say config of A. Or actually, let me just create it here itself. So I'll create a key. I'll call this key as values. This will store one more dictionary. Value of A will be 1. Value of B will be 2. Okay. Yeah, looks good. Now what I'll do is I'll say num1 equal to this, num2 equal to this. 1, 2. Replace 1 with num1, 2 with num2. Okay, pretty simple so far, right? Let's keep it here. Okay, I'm going to take config from values. I'll take A. Similarly, from values, I'll take B. There you go. It's working, right? Now, instead of defining it here as a dictionary, I'll store the exact same thing in my YAML file. Okay. To do that, by the way, we have 2 different configs, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll simply take, let's create 2 configs actually. This is called global config, local config. In the local config, let's create some empty thing, some random thing. I don't want to leave it blank. Yeah, we can create project name. That's a simple thing. Let's give it as image classification. Okay. Okay, that looks good for me. Now what I'm going to do is I'll say for I in this and this, iterate through both of them. I'll create an empty dictionary here. I'll combine both of these dictionaries here. Okay, so the way to do that is dot update of I. Let's print the config. Let's see how it looks like. Okay, I hope this is easy to understand because it's going to get a little more complicated very soon. There you go. So in a single dictionary, we are able to store, we are able to combine both of these dictionaries, all the values from both of these dictionaries. Okay, cool. Anything else looks complicated here? No, I don't think so. Okay, I don't need the print statement. Config. I'm going to do the exact same thing here again as I did with logger. Take all of this code, put it in config init.py, save it, come to my main.py, from code.config import config. Okay, now this should work without any issue. So the moment I give init.py, I have an advantage where I can just hold my control key and then hover over them, and also I can click on these variables which will take me to the place where they were defined. The same thing goes with functions as well. Okay. You can also deep dive into how actually the logger code was written, and you can understand a lot more things here, but it works exactly in the same way. Okay, so it will just redirect you to the place where it was actually defined. Okay, so now my code looks very clean, neat. I've got my main.py and I've got my config, but in the config I'm using dictionaries. Instead of using dictionaries, we are going to use a YAML file. Okay, to do that, let's write these exact parameters in our YAML file. This is the global config. A equal to 1, B equal to 2. Save, close. Go into the local config, project name, image classification. This is a string. Done. Okay. Let's keep this as it is. I'll show you how we can use YAML. Okay. Import YAML. YAML is a library, by the way. And I'll say path equal to. I'll give the path for each of these config files. Now remember, we are calling this script from main.py, so I need to give the path from the perspective of main.py. So this is going to be a relative path. So I should say wherever I've got my main.py, go one folder above that and then go inside of the config folder where you will find config.yml. Or actually, let me rename this gconfig. that stands for global. Okay. And here it's going to be, don't go outside, but rather go inside of code folder config, and this is going to be local config. Oh, was I using lowell? Okay. Where was I? Yeah, L config. Perfect. Now let's iterate through both of them. Let's open them. Now I'm going to store this in a temporary config. So whatever path that is in the current iteration, that will be loaded as a dictionary with the help of yaml.saveload. yaml.saveload of 5. And I'm going to follow this thing again. Empty dictionary dot update of this temporary config. Okay, yeah. That's pretty much it. I don't need any of this. Delete. Let's print our config. And here I'll say, yeah, from config import config. Yep. Let's go ahead and run this again. It worked perfectly in the very first go itself. Okay, so both of the YAML files have been converted into dictionaries and they have been combined. Great. What I can do more here is create this as a function. Why should we do that? I'll tell you why. Okay, now whenever I call this function, it will automatically run this whole thing. It will return me the config dictionary. And here I'll say don't import config variable, but import this function. And here I'll say config equal to read config. So what happens is when you are writing your code, you can just simply say, you can add a comment, import the YAML files or as a dictionary. So let's say if you have multiple configs where all of your credentials are stored in one config.yaml file and all of your hyperparameters are stored in some other YAML file, then you don't have to load all of the configs into a single dictionary. You can create multiple functions and you can edit this path in order to retrieve and gather only the necessary configs for that particular function. So in that way you can create as many functions as you want and use them wherever necessary. Okay, for now I'm using just one function to combine both of them. Okay, everything looks good for now. So yeah, so far this is good. Now this is something which we still haven't moved anywhere, so let's go ahead and remove it from here and I want to store it in utilities. It's a function, right? So let's go into utilities, common utils. Let's put it here. Now the advantage, from code dot logging import logger. I can just simply write it like this. It will work pretty much smoothly. Okay, I've got adder here. Now I'll simply say from code dot utilities import adder. Okay, I'm importing it here. Oh, sorry, utilities dot common utils. So when you're putting something instead of an init function, you don't have to mention it here. I can write it like this. It will work pretty much exactly the same way. But if it is a init.py, then you don't have to explicitly mention it. You can just leave it like that. But for any other .py file, you'll have to explicitly write it down. Cool. We've got common utils from which we are importing adder. I've got adder here. If I just control click, it will take me there. Okay, looks perfect. And it already looks very neat, honestly. Let's go ahead and run this. Working like a champ. Okay. Now, if I go into common utils, let's suppose you have created 100 different utilities functions. You can't just go ahead and write import statements for each one of them, right? So what we usually do is we will define a class. Here we go for camel case for all of the class names. Common utils, define init. I don't want to pass anything inside of my init for now. Okay, let's store it like this. Self, of course. Okay, so I've created a function called a class called common utils, and now I am going to import that class and I'll create an object for that class. Now I'll say from common utils get the adder function and then pass both of these values. So if I control click here, it will take me to this one. Okay, and that's kind of how object-oriented programming works. This is a class, this is the object of that class, this is a method present for this object. Okay, now this looks very neat. I can also do something like multiply, if I can spell it correctly. Okay. I'm going to use this exact same code once again over here. A into B, this is multiply. Okay, it's working. Yep. Okay, so this looks good for now. Let me go ahead and add some data type hints for this. So the way we do that, this is going to be an int. This is also going to be an int. This function is going to return an int. Let's return this in the form of a list actually. Int list. Okay, so these are Python's built-in data types. But what if I want to use some other external data types? For example, if I'm returning a data frame, okay, I'll write it like this. So if I'm returning a data frame, I'll say pd dot data frame. That's it. I'm not going to use any brackets or anything. I'll just keep it like this. The same thing goes with any other data type. numpy.indiarray, tensorflow.torch. You can, tensorflow.tensor, pytorch.tensor. It's up to you. You can use any format. Okay. I don't need that for now. Let's give one line space here. Okay. So why did I do that? Why did I give the data type hints? So let's remove this and I'll say dot multiply. The moment I open my bracket, I know what exactly are the data types that I have to give. What are the parameters? What am I going to get in return? Oh, by the way, there you go. We got the 2 in the form of a list. What were these? Number 1, comma, num2. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is also done. I want to leave it at this point right now because everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. The way I've created these common utils is exactly how we are going to create every other thing. We've covered utilities, pipelines. Okay, pipelines. Let's see how and what we can do inside of pipelines. I don't need the init.py right now. So where is this template.py? Yeah, alt down arrow, there you go. Okay, let's create 2 more things. Data preparation or data gathering, and then we have data preparation. And then we have model training. Model inferencing. Okay. So yeah, this looks good. I'm not going to put a huge bunch of code in any of these. I'll just show you a small example for what we can do in data gathering. Okay. Let's clear this. Let's come out of the scripts folder. Python space template.py. Okay. Oh, my bad. This should have been lconfig and this should have been gconfig. Let me delete these useless ones. Okay, that is done. Bye bye template.py. Thank you for helping us. Let's go into data gathering.py. Here I'm going to do the same thing again. Let's do some sample code like import pandas as pd. Let's create a class called data gathering. Init, nothing inside of the init. Here I'll say transpose image. Oh, this is gathering, right? Sorry. Where should we gather the data? Web scrape. Let's put it like this. Okay. this is just a placeholder, guys. I'm not going to write any code here for now. Maybe sometime in the future, maybe. Okay. I've got web script here. Now, what I'm going to do is, in the main.py, let's comment all of this for now, or actually let's delete all of this for now. Common utils. I'll take it out of here. I'll place it here. Self.common utils. Okay, I need to bring this as well. Okay, so I've got self.common utils. So let's say if I'm doing something here, I've got my image loaded here. So I can say self.common utils dot whatever function that I want to use. Okay. For now, let's remove that. Okay, read function, logging. Let's keep logging here for now. Since we are not using the below code, I am going to get rid of this as well. But let's say if you want to use logging, you can place it here, and you can say is successful. Yeah, so you can use it like this. Okay, after importing the config, let's do the same thing for other objects. From code.pipeline data gathering, import data gathering, dg equal to data gathering. Similarly, we will say dp equal to data preparation, mt equal to model training, and mf equal or mi equal to model inferencing. And you can create all of your separate classes, and then put your if conditions. And then simply say img equal img equal to dg dot web script. So here let's assume that you are returning some kind of an image with 3 different channels with 3 pixels. Okay, that's the first channel. Second, third channel. Okay, this is my image, and I can do all sort of things like preparation and model training and model inferencing using this image. For now, let's just simply comment these. And let's print image. Let's run this. What happened? Okay, these are 2 different things, right? If true. Stored here. Not web script. Is it even going inside of this function? Oh, by the way, there is a debug console here We usually go with that when you have bunch of code, production code. No, it's not going inside of that. Oh, my bad. I was running template.py. I usually have a habit of just pressing the up arrow. Okay. Main.py. No module name pandas. Where do I have this? Let's remove that. Main.py. There you go. Here, web scraping is successful because of the logger. This one. And the result. Okay, it's working. So that's all, folks. I hope you guys have learned something or the other from this whole 1 hour video. And this is kind of how we create a Python pipeline. In the requirement.txt, YAML equal to, or you can just say YAML. Oh, sorry, I don't think it's direct YAML, it's PyYAML actually. Yep. You can write all of your libraries here. Okay, that's how we write the requirement.txt file. You got your template.py, your readme.md. How much battery do I have left? 34%. Great. Let's cover one more small simple thing. In the utilities, I've got init.py. Okay. So what we can do is, whenever we have an init.py file, we usually store or we usually write down details that we can use throughout the code. Okay. I'll show you what I mean by that. So when you create a multi-line comment like this, it will act as a markdown page. So I'll say common utility functions. That should do for the description. Contents. Let's simply say function 1, function 2, function 3. Dot, dot, dot. What else? If you guys have any kind of license available, then you can just simply specify your license here. Okay, great. Yeah, this should do it. Now that's the doc string. Now let's also create some methods, attributes. Who is the author? I am the author. What's my email? Okay. All right. Why do I have to do this? What's my email? I can say someone@example.com. Okay. Yeah. Yes, this should be enough. So why do we have to do this? Let's say if I'm here, I'll say from code.utilities. if I just hover here, you can see all the different details. So whatever I've entered previously are now in the form of a markdown page. Okay, so this is for the markdown thing. I'll say import author. This is a variable that I can use, or I can also say import core.utilities as utils, and let's say utils dot author. No, that won't work. Author. Here you can see how it works. Okay, so that's how we will actually write a really clean, neat init.py, and this is called as a header actually, and we are supposed to write these headers for all the different init.py files, not only init but also the utilities and every single .py file that you're using. Okay, so the only folder that I haven't covered today is components. This is actually something which not a lot of people use. So components is usually dedicated for Python scripts which are neither completely pipelines nor completely utilities. Okay, so there are very specific scenarios where you will need the components folder. That's the reason why I didn't really cover that folder today, but we usually don't need it when we are working on simple projects like this. Okay, so I hope you guys have enjoyed, and see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. Take care.